unfortunately not a partisan issue. I think there's probably bad actors on both sides. So it's a bit of gamesmanship. It makes for great TV. You know, they can splash it up there and show, look, victim, Donald Trump.
I think even from the MAGA base, there is an appetite for more transparency than there is right now.
Tonight, the story that just won't go away. Democrats have unleashed a new batch of explosive emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate, claiming that Donald Trump knew about the girls. One suggests Trump spent hours with a victim. Another written by Epstein saying, I know how dirty Donald is. Now, the White House is saying tonight it's a political smear. They're saying the so-called unnamed victim mentioned in the email is actually Virginia Giuffre, the same woman at the centre of the Prince Andrew scandal and who was on the record before her death saying President Trump had done nothing wrong. So what's going on? Is it evidence? Is it corroboration? Or is it just some conveniently timed links with lots of redactions? Joining us down the line is Christina Bobb, former Trump lawyer and former prosecutor. Good evening, Christina. Welcome back to the show. White House is determined to say this is a nothing burger and doesn't prove anything. Dems are getting very excited, but this story just won't go away for the White House, will it?
Yeah, no, this one is lingering, and I think it's going to linger until we get some more information. I think this is something Americans actually care about because they want to make sure that our leaders aren't contributing to this type of problem with potential child trafficking or inappropriate relationships with children. Certainly any American on either side wants to make sure that that's the case. So I think it's probably going to linger until we get a little bit more information. And I would agree with Caroline Levitt. I don't think these emails particularly say anything salacious. There's certainly no hints of illegal activity by Donald Trump. A lot of the information is information that already came out. But I don't think they're doing themselves many favors by continuing to keep the information concealed.
Is it time now just for the White House? I know they've been resisting it. I know there's efforts tonight to try and stop a House vote to publish the full files. That would then have to go through way through the Senate, which is not necessarily clear it would do. And then obviously the White House, the president, could veto such a move. That would be a politically contentious moment. It'd be sort of all the Democrats' Christmases coming at once if he was to actively step in to stop the publication. But haven't we just reached the point now where, you know, how bad can it be if the White House are confident that President Trump has done nothing wrong? Just get it all out.
Right. And I don't think President Trump has done anything wrong. I don't think they're protecting Donald Trump. I mean, certainly if there was really salacious, dirty information on him, it would have come out, you know, over the last 8 years while they were trying to prosecute him and throw him in prison and impeach him. I mean, if it existed, I think we would have seen it by now. So I don't know what their end game is with it. I do think it would be better to release it than keep it hidden for whoever they're protecting. And I suspect it's people on both sides of the aisle. This is unfortunately not a partisan issue. I think there's probably bad actors on both sides. So I don't know what their end game is, but I'd like to see it come out. But I do believe that they're considering, you know, you have to be really careful about how you release this types of information because it can harm innocent people. And so you want to make sure that all of the victims are safe and that anybody who, you know, someone delivering mail who happened to be seen there, you know, isn't caught up in this type of salacious allegations unfairly. So there's a lot of considerations going into how that information is redacted, how it's released. And so it's a sticky problem.
Today proves, though, the sort of political power of the redaction, doesn't it? In that tranche of emails published by the Democrats on the Oversight Committee, they redacted Virginia Giuffre's name very deliberately, replacing it with the word victim. Yes, she was a victim of the scandal, no doubt about that. But she has been publicly identified by it before. It seems to me like with those redactions, they were suggesting or trying to suggest that this was trying to muddy the water in some aspects because Giuffre was very clear on the record. President Trump did nothing wrong in her view.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so when you put that word victim on there in an email that's discussing Donald Trump, naturally it goes to muddy the water and lead people to believe that she's somehow a victim of Donald Trump, even though she herself has said she was not and she's not aware of anybody else who was. So it's a bit of gamesmanship. It makes for great TV. You know, they can splash it up there and show, look, victim, Donald Trump, you should hate him, you know, which is their goal. But it's not, I mean, none of this would be admissible in court. It's all hearsay. You know, they can't be cross-examined, unfortunately, because they're several people on this chain are no longer with us.
No, exactly.
But so it's just a way to create a story in the media that doesn't have any real legal teeth. But that's what this is. It's a media show, right? It's all for show.
Exactly. I mean, how does this play out, though? Obviously, this has been months and months and months of this. What is the time frame for the next tranches of documents? And what I found fascinating, really, looking at some of that, was just how far Jeffrey Epstein's network went, really. We knew about his relationship with Peter Mandelson. We knew about his relationship with Prince Andrew, well, the Andrew formerly known as Prince, now Andrew Windsor, Mountbatten Windsor, Mr. Plain Old Andrew. But when you see journalists like Michael Wolff openly colluding with Jeffrey Epstein post-jail to try to dig up as much dirt as possible on Donald Trump in the run-up to the 2016 elections. The Democrats don't necessarily helping themselves with some of the emails they put out today, because all those people that said there was this big media and Democrat conspiracy to stop Trump, it's there in black and white.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what it is. Michael Wolff built his career on creating basically fake, salacious cases against presidents and ruining careers kind of artificially, if I can say that. He's been discredited many times. So they're basically proving their own point that you get a reporter who, if you can call him that, or an author, who has a history of creating kind of fake scandals against politicians he doesn't like. And he's largely the basis in these emails, helping concoct a story with Jeffrey Epstein. And I do think it's worth noting that he does not accuse Donald Trump of any criminal activity. The worst thing he could find, or the worst thing that he mentioned in the email, was simply that Donald Trump was with Jeffrey Epstein, that they had a relationship, which we all knew, we've all known for years. So, the reporter who's known for creating scandal is proven in these emails to be part of creating the scandal, and even what he's creating is not all that.
What the president might call fake news. Christina, stay there. I'm going to bring in my colleague, Times of London, Washington editor, Katie Bulls. Good evening, Katie. Talk us through the politics of this. How bad is this for the White House? Obviously, Caroline Leavitt did a briefing at the White House earlier today. Obviously, she was asked about it, but she came out pretty swinging, right? How's this vote looking, and is it going to pass?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can see the White House on the defensive. Of course, they have been quite quick to say this is all political blows and none of this really matters because the Democrats don't want to talk about the shutdown. But I think even if, the Democrats in turn also accusing the Republicans of, just making this about politics. But of course, I think if you just take away from that, the question is there any new information that's coming out which is going to be particularly bad for Donald Trump, the Republican Party, or other figures, in those documents? And so far, obviously, the most difficult thing for Donald Trump is the sense from an Epstein email saying that Donald Trump spent time with one of the victims, as you've been discussing. Other than that, there's not too much changing, and the White House is very much sticking to the line of, yes, they were friends. Donald Trump realized this guy was a creep, so he ended it. I think when it comes to the vote, they're clearly trying to stop it, and it does add to this sense, which is what is tricky for Donald Trump and the Republican Party here, is they spent so long in that period, out of power before returning, in almost feeding the sense there was a big conspiracy, inviting influencers to the DOJ at one point to say they were going to release the files. But I think even from the MAGA base, there is an appetite for more transparency than there is right now.
Yeah, well, no, Donald Trump was the person that made this a thing. He made it, in every campaign stop for for his re-election. He was promising to release the files. Do you sense there's any sort of changing mood, Katie, from the White House of actually, if, as they say, he's done nothing wrong, as they say, the emails come out, and if there was a smoking gun, we probably would have known about it by now. Yes, some of it's a bit embarrassing, but in some of those emails, it appears that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein have convinced themselves that Donald Trump, the dog that hadn't barked, was the reason that Trump's name was actually not mentioned by people, is because he was colluding with prosecutors and he's working with law enforcement against Jeffrey Epstein, a guy he's on the record from saying was a creep and he didn't like. Is there not an elegant pivot that they could get into and actually start to lean into this, actually say, they're all very well screaming smear, but they could come out on the attack on this, couldn't they?
Yeah, they could potentially. And I also think, even if you look at the choreography today, which is this began with the Democrats on the committee ultimately releasing very specific information all about Donald Trump. The response of the Republicans was to then release 20,000 files, which we've all had to spend the day slightly digging through, which Steve Bannon might call flooding the zone. So much information, what do you do? But certainly the response, we don't know if there were direct conversations with the White House on that or not, but that's the Republicans who want to be more helpful to Donald Trump than the Democrats, making the decision that actually more information is better in this instance. And perhaps we will get, if this comes out and there isn't, an email that looks like it's about to bring the president down, maybe there will be an appetite for more information.
Christina Bobb, the DOJ are working with the House Oversight Committee. They are making stuff available. Clearly, there's a hell of a lot more to come. Are we going to see the ultimate release of the Epstein files, but just by sort of trickle by trickle, batch by batch, day by day, week by week? I mean, we're still going to be talking about this in 2028?
I actually think we will see as much as can legally be released. I do think it is trickle by trickle, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, this is a hot potato. It's been a hot potato for many administrations, going back at least to the Bush administration, in Barack Obama. It's gone back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. This is not a party issue. And it's a hot potato that has just landed in Donald Trump's lap, along with all the Republicans who are in power right now. And they don't want to have anything to do with it. And I think Democrats are trying to get it out now before there's any type of power shift, whether it's in 2028 or beyond. And so they don't want to be the ones that inherit this hot potato, right? And so I think the Democrats are going to push hard to get it out now. I think ultimately it is in President Trump and the Republicans' best interest to get as much out as they can and take credit for releasing it, right? Democrats have had, the whole Biden administration, two Barack Obama administrations, they never released anything. So I think this could be an opportunity for a win, but it looks to be a terrible situation for both parties, and Republicans are in power at the moment.
Having, President Obama's White House counsel in 2014-15 still in direct touch with Jeffrey Epstein after he'd served a long friendship that's been exposed there. No one comes out of this exactly smelling of roses. Christina, you've defended President Trump over the years, and we'll discuss a little more on that in a moment. But just on that point there about what to expect in the run-up to the next year's midterms, the possibility of the Republicans losing the House, if they lose control of the committees, we'll be back into sort of impeachment 2.0, and more attempts to drag the president sort of out of office under the cloud of disgrace. Obviously, the Arctic Frost investigation is still, inquiry by oversight is still going on. There's lots to be done there. Donald Trump's suing the BBC. He's suing various other media outlets. He's fighting on a lot of fronts here. Is the White House tooled up enough, in your view, to be fighting pretty much on, every front?
Well, I think they are fighting. The White House itself, I think, yes. I think they're doing everything they can. I think President Trump has done a good job of, pulling his own weight on the things that he said he was going to do. Whether we're seeing that come out of the Department of Justice, like the agencies around the administration, there's probably a little bit more room for debate on that. Personally, I would like to see the Department of Justice be a little bit more aggressive, at least in investigations and exposing aspects of things. But the White House, I think the White House is doing what the White House does. I think President Trump is doing his best to uphold his campaign promises, but he can't do it by himself. He can't do it without his agencies. And in a lot of ways, he can't do it without the House and the Senate. And the House and the Senate, which both are Republicans right now, haven't been pursuing his agenda. So,
Katie Bowles, on that point, is Pam Bondi, it's an unenviable task being Trump's top lawyer, right? It's never a dull day. We're seeing increasing sort of coverage, I should say denied on the record, but coverage by respected journalists nonetheless on tensions between the FBI Director Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, tensions between Todd Blanche, who was one of Trump's former lawyers and now is number 2 at DOJ. Are they trying? Have they got bitten off more than they can chew? And is this going to, where's this going to go? I mean, lawfare is certainly back on the agenda, right?
Yes, and look, Pam Bondi has so many tasks she's being asked to do. You also have, the list of kind of enemies of Donald Trump, where he wants justice served, James Comey and others, that she's almost expected to run through. There's been incidents where, what appears to meant to be a DM from the president is actually a public tweet giving her orders.
I'm pretty sure that one was deliberate, right?
Yeah, well, there's mixed reports. But effectively, clearly she's under pressure to deliver a lot of those things. And also she is someone who's quite regularly criticised by parts of the MAGA fringes, particularly on Epstein. They think that she mishandled it in the beginning with that infamous interview where she said she had the client list on her desk, only to then say there's not a client list to release. So I think that, but Donald Trump routinely has spoke very positively of her. I think in that department, though, they are obviously going to be quite stretched in terms of how much they can do and how they can do it. And Trump and lawfare, I think, you speak to people around Trump, and one of the reasons he ran for president, yes, he wants to return, but he also thought if he didn't return, he would likely end up in jail and have multiple lawsuits.
Yeah, exactly.
So while he's got the power, he wants to do as much to put his own enemies back, because what happens, 2028 onwards?
It strikes me that there's a sort of core team in this administration. You have J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, I'd say, was probably in there. And then the sort of outer ring of people, including sort of people like Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. That's where it seems to be a little bit more frayed. The White House obviously put a very protective arm around Kash Patel today, allowing him to come to the sort of press briefing and announce with much fanfare this deal with China over fentanyl. But more and more stories are appearing about people in the administration. For the first 10 months, actually, this has been kind of plain sailing. All the fire's been turned on the White House, really. But Kash Patel under fire from kind of his own side, really, using his private jet to ferry his girlfriend round to concerts and football games. Are we seeing a bit more scrutiny now?
Yeah, I think you could probably say that this administration, second term Trump, is probably ending its honeymoon period. Now, it might sound mad to call it a honeymoon period if you think about how much has happened, but I think there has been a sense in the first couple of months, you looked at that, very definitive result in the election, how it gave Trump so much authority, and then, as you say, in the first term, there was so much more infighting. So much of the coverage was about the splits, and the staff turnover was so much higher. Whereas now, I think, particularly with the elections last week, there's a little bit of a reality check coming. The fact that the Democrats had a really good set of results, the Republicans did not. You can say individual factors, but it does mean you now have some Republicans looking around and starting to say, hang on a minute, are we focused enough on domestic issues? Do we have the right people in position? Are some people being self-serving and almost playing into this idea the Democrats want to land, which is that, Donald Trump and his team are partying and living in, gold covered palaces, Great Gatsby parties.
To be fair to the guy, I'm exhausted just watching it. I'm keeping up with that daily schedule. That trip to Asia, the trips to the Middle East, the guy does work. Christina, just a final question while we've still got you. Talking of Donald Trump's influence and power, congratulations are in order for your pardon.
Well, thank you. It was certainly a nice gesture, and I appreciate Ed Martin, and I think Cleta Mitchell was involved, and the folks that really wanted to try to show support for a lot of President Trump supporters that we had kind of really been left by the wayside. I'm very grateful. My indictment had been thrown out 5 months ago, and it's just administratively waiting to kind of get dismissed. So I'm grateful that I don't have to actually use it. But yeah, I did make the list.
You say it's a nice gesture, but is there a bit of politics in there in terms of, as Katie was just saying there, the MAGA base has started to flex a little bit. They started to complain about the direction of travel of the administration. Influence have gone over the top for the first time in a long time to say, what's going on. Obviously, the Epstein files, has upset a fair few people. Pardoning yourself and figures like Rudy Giuliani, that was a gift to the supporters as much as the people involved, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what it was. I think people are, particularly the people who were very involved in 2020 and who are watching the 2020 election closely, love Rudy Giuliani. They love Mark Meadows and everybody that was involved there.
And they love Christina Bobb, surely.
And me, I hope so. I certainly hope so.
All right, listen, thank you for joining us tonight.